We go to the gym before our bodies break down, and we service our cars before they fail. But when it comes to our mental health, most of us wait for a kind of crisis to start. What if the mental fitness was not about something that we turned to when things falls apart, but something we trained every week, like strength or endurance training? So today we will explore this idea of mental gym. Yeah. So hey dear listeners, welcome back to another powerful episode of Mind Meets Machine, where we explore how humans perform, lead, and grow in a world that's constantly accelerating. I'm your host Avik, and today I'm joined by a lovely guest. Please welcome Corey Chadwick. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. And dear listeners, before we get into the discussion today, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Corey. Um, Corey is the founder and CEO of Lycium, a live coach-led mental gym, which is designed for growth-driven leaders and high performers who want to proactively strengthen their mindset. And after losing his mother to mental illness for 25 years ago, he made a kind of conscious decision to approach his own mental health differently, like not reactively, but intentionally. So, what began as a prevention evolved into a kind of structured, practical system for upgrading how we think, decide, and show up, especially under the pressure. So, I'll not take much of your time. Let's get into the discussion. Welcome to the show again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Amazing, amazing. So Corey, before we get into more deep dive, I definitely love to start with a kind of curiosity. Like, what shifted you personally when you choose to move from reacting to the circumstances to proactively managing your mental well-being?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, this started with my mother, right? So my mother struggled with mental illness. It became evident as I was a teenager that she was she was battling what she was battling, and it ended tragically. My mom took her own life when I was 21. It was an incredibly difficult time, obviously. There was also this fear that her condition could be genetic. And if it was, could I really just cross my fingers and hope for the best? That just didn't seem like a strategy.
Hmm.
I realized that I could wait and see what happened. And if things did go down a bad path, then I could reactively try to address it. But that just didn't seem like a strategy either. Like, why would I wait until that happened and then try to get back to a level of normal functionality? That just didn't sound appealing to me. And the other option was to be proactive, to get mentally healthy and fit, to really take control of my mind. And that just made a lot more sense to me. At the time, I was a psychology major. I was always interested in how we think and how we make decisions and how we behave and why we show up the way we do. And I started developing a system and a structure to upgrade how I thought and made decisions and behaved, and in a very practical way, not and no real heavy lifting either, just consistent manageable improvements that compounded over time. I had a drive and a desire to show up at my best and to do it consistently, and not just when it's easy, but also when it's hard, and not just once in a while, but consistently in my relationships, in my work, and how I performed and how I led. This really appealed to me. And so I became very intentional about it. And really, I was just doing it for my own benefit, developing this system and this structure. And just over time, one thing led to another. And well, here we are today.
Exactly, exactly. So, you know, like, there's still this underlying belief that mental health support is something you seek when things go wrong. So I'm curious, like, why do you think we have normalized a kind of reactive approach?
Because we're a very reactive society. We we accept sort of a status quo, even if it's one that we don't particularly like or are inspired by. But hey, it's fine. It's good enough. And then we only react when fine becomes not fine anymore. On a scale from 1 to 10, if we're operating at a 5, we say that's fine. And then once we fall down to a 1 or a 2, then we say, hey, I need help getting back up to a 3 or a 4 so I can function. I think about this And I think it's important to see the parallels between mental health and fitness and physical health and fitness. There are so many ways, so many opportunities we have to prioritize our physical health and fitness. And when you say physical health, you don't think about somebody who's sick or injured. You think about somebody who's healthy and fit, right? You're probably picturing somebody who's working out or going for a run, but they're in great shape and they're taking care of themselves. Yes, we also have reactionary physical care. If you break a leg, if you get sick or ill, then for sure we have doctors and physiotherapists and things like that. But to approach mental health in a way that is entirely reactive instead of proactive, right? When you think about people who go to a gym, yes, there are people who go to a gym because they were injured and they need to recover, but most people go because they want to live a healthy, fit lifestyle where they feel great and they feel strong and they age well and they have more energy. I mean, this is why we take care of our bodies, right? And we need to be thinking about our mental health and well-being the exact same way. Our mental fitness, like our physical fitness, not something that we do because we're in crisis, but something that we proactively prioritize so that we can keep showing up at our best. And that is that mindset shift I would like to see society be making.
Exactly. And like also if you can share like what tends to happen when high performers ignore their mental fitness because they are doing fine kind of attitude. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's this misconception that if you want to perform, you have to grind harder, work longer, and burn out while you
Mm,
do it. For a long time, burnout was like a badge of honor. That doesn't make much sense, but it is what it is. And we're getting away from that, recognizing that it doesn't do you any good to perform at a high level in short bursts and then burn out. If it's not sustainable, if that performance isn't sustainable, then it's really not serving you or anybody else well. So we need high performance, absolutely we do, but we also need it to be sustainable. So we need to recognize that teetering on the edge of burnout or edging towards burnout isn't something to aspire to. It's actually something to really pay attention to and
mm,
say, I can't be on this end of the scale. I need to be on the high end of the scale
yeah,
so that burnout isn't an issue and that I can prevent it entirely.
I agree. And I mean, so we don't lack the ambition, right? Like we lack a kind of maintenance model, right? I mean, that brings us to your core idea, right? So also, if we talk about the root causes, right? Like why don't we train the mind like we train our body, right? So why hasn't mental training become a kind of normalized as we do for our body in the gym or that whatever we do? So what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's maybe two reasons why, and maybe more, but the two that come to mind. One is again the reactive nature that we have of it, or the way that we've learned
Mm,
to think about mental health. So if you think, okay, I'm going to work on my mental health, then the question is, well, do I need to see a therapist? And it's like therapy is a great approach for some people in some situations, but it's not a one size fits all. It's certainly not relevant to everybody.
mm,
It's not relatable to everybody. That's again, like oftentimes it's the crisis response rather than the good to great way of thinking about it. One of the other reasons too is that mental performance is often associated with ultra high performers. So high performing athletes, CEOs who are already long time ago bought into the importance
mm,
of mental performance. But there seems to be a gap between the ultra elite performers and kind of the normal everyday performers, people who are aspiring to be great leaders at work and high performers in their jobs, but also be great parents and be great partners and feel great and be happy in their day-to-day lives. So there
mm.
seems to be a bit of a gap there where it might not be as accessible, but we need to make that more accessible. We need to make it just a normal part of everyday life. But you can bridge that gap, and that's certainly something that we're doing,
Well,
and also change that narrative from reactive to proactive. You mentioned a maintenance model, and I think it's important to recognize that too, that it's not just maintenance, it's actually consistent improvement and growth.
mm,
If people, I mentioned that scale from 1 to 10, and let's say it's not just a mental health scale, but it's kind of a who you are, how you're showing up scale. If you're showing up at a 7, and most people who would come to Lycium, the leaders and the high performers, they're not coming in at a 2. They would identify as I'm a 7, I'm an 8, but what's 10 like? I want to show up at my best. What's that 10 like? I want 10. And 10 doesn't mean perfect, and it's not some
mm,
unsustainable measure or working harder or grinding out or burning out while you do. It's none of those. But it really truly is showing up at your best. And so when you think about it like that, how do I show up at my best? How do I think and make decisions and behave at my best? How do I lead at my best? How do I perform at my best and feel my best? And not just for
Yeah.
myself, but for all the people who count on me. Then you think about it differently. And when you do, you see it as not a something I need to do to maintain my situation, but actually something I can do to dramatically improve my situation. And that's
Yeah.
appealing to a lot of people.
I agree. I totally agree with this. And like for the leaders, especially, like what invisible cost accumulate when mindset is not, I would say, intentionally developed.
Well, so think about any sort of results that people are trying to get, business results, relationship results. I mean, you could go across a range of results here. It all starts with a thought or a way of thinking. And that thought or that way of thinking is going to translate into a decision that you make based on the thought that you have. And then you're going to act or behave in a certain way based on the decision that you make. And then that action or behavior is going to lead to a result or an outcome, right? And so if you are not thinking like your 10 self, and let's say you're thinking like a 7 version of yourself, then you're going to end up with 7 results because one thing's going to lead to another. So when you talk about that, those leaders who are ignoring their mindset, well, your mindset is entirely your mental attitude about life, right? I mean, that's what it is. And so if your mental attitude about life, about work, about home is a 7 mindset, that's how you're going to think. That's how you're going to make decisions. That's how you're going to behave. That's how you're going to show up. And those are the results you're going to get. So that mental attitude needs to shift. Your perspective needs to shift. And it needs to become that version, that mindset that leads you where you want to go and takes you and your people where they want to go. You can't ignore mindset. It's way too important.
It sounds like kind of neglect doesn't just kind of affect the individual, but it ripples into families, teams, cultures. So,
Absolutely,
I
it
mean,
does.
yeah,
Right? How
right.
leaders show up determines how everyone shows up.
Yeah, yeah.
So if a leader's showing up at a 7, then you're creating a ripple effect of other people showing up at their 7 or worse. That's what they're inspired to do. And the thing is, people don't want to be 7s, at least not the people that we work with. People, they want to show up at their 10s and they need leaders who can help them do that. But that can't
Mm,
happen if leaders are showing up at their 7 or their 6 or even worse.
exactly. So suppose if someone who's listening, it resonates with this idea, but they feel unsure where to begin. I mean, what's the first mental workout you'd recommend them?
Well, once you join Lycium, it's a structured workout program. And so everybody starts at the same point in their workout journey with some real fundamentals of how you think and make decisions and behave, and understanding that there is a difference between your default way of thinking and making decisions and the way that your 10 self could do that. And that's really where we start. We start with understanding some really simple components about the direction that you're moving in. And it doesn't need to be like a beautifully detailed plan of what your life wants to be or anything like that. It could be something as simple as identifying in 1 or 2 words what you actually want and what's most important to you, which is a question that most people tend not to ask themselves, right? We kind of go through life doing the same things we've always done, doing it the same way we've always done it, looking to check the boxes. And then we wonder why we're unhappy or we're not as fulfilled as we want to feel. Our relationships aren't where they need to be. We're not consistently performing the way we want or not reaching that next level. So just really helping you understand in an entirely non-judgmental way, just a safe, honest, reflective space of who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? And how can I start noticing the difference between the way my default self would do this and the way my 10 self would do this? And then just making it really simple to take action on it and to integrate it. But that first workout is really just that starting point of, hey, let's go. What direction are we moving in? And let's make sure we, from now on until potentially the rest of your life, you keep moving in that direction.
And suppose, I mean, obviously, like Lyceum is not a kind of therapy, but and it's not a corporate training either. So, what makes consistent coach-led group work more effective than one of the kind of inspiration?
Then one off, is that what you said?
One of the inspiration.
Yeah. So it's not therapy, although certainly there's a therapeutic component to it. It is not typical corporate leadership training. It is modern, it is relevant, it's relatable. Leaders and high performers really see themselves in this development. It resonates with them. They identify who they are and who they want to be and how they want to show up. And Lyceum helps them do that. The importance of them being inspired by it is important. The importance of their organization being inspired by it is important. People first leaders and cultures who want to be destination employers and want to take care of their people. That's incredibly important. And when you talk about, a one-off or something like that, if you think about going to a gym for your body, you would never lift weights once or go for a run once and say, I'm all done, I'm healthy, right? It makes no sense. It doesn't work. It's true for our bodies and it's true for our minds. We need consistency in our growth. We need consistency to be able to check in with ourselves and with each other as we continue to grow and stay on that path. We need consistency to learn new concepts and not just learn the tools, but actually practice using them. So we develop the skills and the mental habits and the mindset that we need. We need all of those components to make sure that we're showing up at our best. With that consistency and with that compounding growth, it benefits many of us to have consistent guidance and accountability and community as we do it. So we're not out there doing it by ourselves. We're not trying to figure it out on our own. And we get to do it in a way that just resonates with how we want to show up day to day.
It's really lovely, I'd say. And so the key is not the kind of inspiration, as I understand. I mean, is not the information, but it's the kind of accountability, reputation, and integration. Am I correct?
It's all of it, right? Obviously, the
Yeah.
information is important, right, to learn and to think differently. But the structure, the integration, the community, it's all a part of it. I mean, for people to show up at their best, there's really these three main components that need to exist. One, we need to be proactive with our mental health and well-being. We need to be mentally fit. As we said, you can't show up at your best if you're burning out or overly stressed or anxious or depressed. Like it's not going to work. So we need to make sure that we're being proactive and moving from good to great. We need that development that resonates, that matters, that's relatable, that's human, that's relevant, that's not woo-woo, and that's not kind of typical corporate training and cookie cutter type of thing. And we need that community of like-minded people who are also aspiring to their tens. Intelligent, growth-driven leaders and high performers. They're kind, they're ambitious, they're self-reflective, and they want to be around other people and grow with other people like them. And when you put those three components together with the guidance, with the consistency, with the accountability, this creates that container for growth that we really truly need to show up at our best. And I strongly feel and believe that while I would never say that Lycium is the only approach. No, never. In fact, I love that there are different approaches and people can find the approach that's best for them. I've found consistently in hearing from our members and people over the years how important all of these components are to their consistent growth and to showing up at their best.
Agree. And also, I'd love to talk about the setbacks and the sustaining growth, because growth is not linear, right? So,
No, of course.
um, yeah. So even disciplined people regress under stress as well. So, what tends to derail someone who's uh, trying to build mental fitness?
So yeah, like you said, growth isn't linear. It never is. Life's filled with ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and that's always going to be true. You look at my situation with my mother. Certainly, life threw me a curveball then, right? Prior to that, I had a brain virus that took doctors 7 months just to diagnose it. So I spent 7 months not knowing if I was going to live or die. There's
Mm.
life throwing something at you. My father struggled with drug and alcohol addiction. There's, like life throws a lot of stuff at us, and it might not be to that level. It might be more than that level. Like, it's not about comparing. It's just recognizing that we're all going through life and we're trying to do the best we can. And it's not easy. And we've got a lot on our plates. Day to day, we've got a lot on our plates,
Mm.
especially busy leaders and high performers. You've got your families at home, you've got your teams at work. You're trying to take care of so much of the time and take care of yourself. We've got everything going on in this world right now, right? Like it's AI is slowly, or very quickly, I should say, changing things. You've got politics and war and division and climate change and cost of living. Like, there's just so many things that are weighing on people mentally and emotionally. So recognizing all of that and not taking a fingers crossed approach to it, but proactively building the resilience that we need, the grit that we need, the mindset that we need, the adaptability that we need, the ability to make decisions and make great decisions under pressure and in stressful situations. These are skills and tools that are just so important. And I could go on with emotional intelligence and so on. These are such important skills to develop, not just so we can handle adversity when it happens, but also because it helps us show up so much better in day-to-day life when adversity is not right in front of us. But when it is, and I'll actually share a story that just somebody shared yesterday in a session where awesome lovely person. She's a leader at work. She's a high performer. She's a mother. She's a wife. And so she's dealing with everything. She'd just been promoted. So she's dealing with everything at work. Her husband just recently went through surgery, and her father just had a heart attack. And all of this was just piling on her plate at the same time. And you're thinking, wow, like this is a lot to just be trying to process and take care of your kids and do all of this. And she shared with us, she said, I couldn't believe how good I felt during all of this. And that doesn't mean she's
Yeah.
happy about what's going on. Obviously, it's still difficult. But she said, people were noticing. They're like, how are you so calm right now? How are you making decisions with clarity and confidence with everything going on? And this is just a testament to the effort that she's put in, to developing the skills, the habits, the tools, the mindset, right? To developing what she needs to proactively, not reactively. So yes, your growth isn't linear, but it also doesn't need to be derailed when life gets hard or when you're faced with challenging situations. Being able to persevere, being able to push through and come out better on the other side is absolutely essential if you're going to be showing up at your 10 self, right? We always say that showing up at your best can't be conditional upon the rest of life, like taking care of you, right? It can't be conditional on everything being great around you, because anybody can do it when it's easy. But what about when it's not? What about when it's hard? What about when it's challenging and it's difficult? Anybody can do it once in a while, but what about consistently? And so
Yeah.
this is the important part here, that if we're waiting for our situation, our circumstances to line up so that we can show up at our
Mhm.
best, it's not going to happen. But if we can say, you know what, life does happen, for sure it does, at work, at home, and globally, I'm going to choose to show up at my best anyway. And so here's what I need to do to make sure that happens. Then we're just in so much of a better spot, especially with everything going on in the world right now, to adapt, to thrive, to keep going and to come out on top, to future proof ourselves in that capacity. I mean, I'm repeating myself here, but we can't wait for the situation to be
Yeah.
ideal. We need to recognize that it's not, and still choose to show up at our best anyway.
Exactly. And one more thing I would love to ask you, like when someone falls back into a kind of reactive patterns, right? Frustration, stress,
Mm.
avoidance. So, what do you say? Like, how do they course correct without the self-judgment?
Oh, I love that question. Yes. Showing up at your best is going to look different some days than other days, right?
Yeah.
We are human. We're not robots, and we
Yeah.
deal with life and we process life in different ways. And even though people in Lycium see huge reductions in stress, anxiety, and burnout, that doesn't mean it goes down to zero. You still feel levels of stress. You still experience stressful things in your life, and have experiences of anxiety. It is so important to not judge ourselves. We have a rule actually in Lycium. It's no judgment for ourselves and no judgment for each other, because we are all human and we're all trying to figure it out. And we have so much in common with each other. We want a lot of the same
Mm.
things. We run into a lot of the same challenges. And one of the big shifts that people see in Lycium is, rather than judging themselves, they see an opportunity for growth. And so they say, oh, there's an opportunity. Let me pay attention to what's going on there. What can I learn? How can I grow? When we judge ourselves, and it's very common to judge ourselves, right? And to be hard on ourselves. And,
Mm.
and I think every single one of us can relate to that. And your self esteem takes a hit, and maybe your personal worth takes a hit, and you're simply not feeling your best. And then you can get into a spiral of negative thinking and negative feelings, and it really does spiral. And I'm sure every single person listening to this has been in their own version of a negative spiral, maybe multiple times. And so, to make sure that, one, we don't fall into that spiral, and two, to make sure that what we're going through doesn't define us, and there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing to judge about it. It's just something that maybe you haven't learned yet, a skill you haven't developed yet, a tool you don't have access to yet, a mindset you haven't developed yet, the practice you haven't put in yet. It's not that there's something wrong with you. There's zero need for judgment. Replace judgment with curiosity. Replace a problem with an opportunity. And that doesn't mean toxic positivity or pretending the problems don't exist. Of course they do, but not dwelling on the problems, and instead saying, again, like so many of us do in Lycium, okay, what's the opportunity here? Where's my growth opportunity? What can I learn? How can I grow? How can I be better? That takes so much of the judgment out of it, and really just accelerates growth.
Interesting. Really interesting. And obviously, it sounds like the mental fitness is not kind of eliminating the struggle, but it's all about shortening the recovery time and
Hmm.
also at the same time strengthening the kind of awareness. Like here on Healthy Mind by Awake, we are doing the same, creating the awareness, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, that is much important. And like for someone who is listening right now, or maybe they will be listening, who has always taken care of everyone else, everyone.
Hmm.
So, but they haven't looked for themselves, right? So, what would you invite them to kind of reconsider about their responsibility to their own mental health?
Yeah, I love that question. And just before I answer that, I just want to touch on something you just said before about it's not that the struggle doesn't exist, but it is about normalizing it. It's about recognizing that you're not the only one who finds things challenging sometimes and is going through ups and downs. In fact, we all feel the same way. We just need to talk about it in a way, again, it's like it's no judgment. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm
Yeah.
human, and this is a part of this journey that I'm on. So normalizing it is so important. There are a lot of people who feel, I don't want to call it a burden, but certainly the weight of taking care of everybody else. When you're talking about parents, when you're talking about leaders at work, when you're talking about active people in their community. And it is very common for them to say, I need to take care of everybody else and put them first. But there's something we strongly believe in Lycium is that, and I mentioned this before, if people are showing up at a 6 or a 7 or even lower on that scale, then that's the capacity you have to take care of everybody else. You're creating a ripple effect one way or another. If you're creating a ripple effect at a 5 or a 6, you're creating a 5 or a 6 ripple effect. If you're showing up that way, that's the ripple effect you create. So if you want to help people and you want to take care of people in the way that you need to, that they benefit from the most, that requires you taking care of yourself. It requires you putting yourself in a position that you can show up at your 10 so that you create a 10 level ripple effect and help other people show up at their 10s too. I understand why people struggle with that concept and think, nope, I still need to take care of everybody. Hey, I'm a parent. I've got 2 young boys. Obviously, their needs are going to come first in many ways, but not always. And it is so evident to me to be the kind of husband that I want to be the kind of father that I want to be the kind of leader that I want to be, to do the work that I want to do. I need to prioritize taking care of myself. Obviously, I'm doing it for myself because I feel so much better and I perform at a higher level when I'm doing it. But it is
Mm.
also quite clear to me that I'm doing it for them. I show up better for them. Also, in many ways, like from a leadership perspective, from a parenting perspective, I love that my sons see how important things like exercise are to me and the way that I eat and meditation being a daily practice. I love that they're seeing these things, that I get to model them for them because this is what they learn also. You do need to take care of yourself. It is important. And not just sometimes as a maintenance, but again, really, I think of it and we think of it as how do I show up at my best for myself and for everybody who counts on me? That's the way I encourage people
Exactly.
to look at that.
Lovely. That's really lovely. So definitely, it's really a great conversation, I'd say, and it's a great topic as well to think about. So, Corey, like before we move, I'd love to ask you, like, if listeners or anyone who want to explore Elysium or connect with you directly, then where should they go?
To connect with me directly, LinkedIn is a great place to do that. You'll see me on LinkedIn. I hang out there sometimes. So by all means,
Hmm.
please connect with me on LinkedIn and say hi. And to learn more about Lycium or to connect through Lycium, our website, www.yourlyceum.com. That's YOUR, Lyceum, LYCEUM.com. Those two places are great places to start.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links and the details into the show notes for easy reference. And before we move, I'd love to I'll try to summarize in very short. Like, mental health is not a kind of crisis response, but it's a daily training. And like any training we do, right? So, the benefits compound over time. So,
Mhm.
that's very simple. So, with this hope, dear listeners, we live in a world that rewards the output, right? So, but sustainable performance comes from a kind of disciplined recovery, intentional reflection, and also about the proactive growth. So, here on Mind Meets Machine, we believe that the future belongs to the leaders who strengthen both their systems and their minds. That is what Mind Meets Machine, right? So, if if today's conversation has resonated with you, please share this episode with someone who's ready to move from kind of coping to thriving. So, with this hope, this is your host Avik. Until next time, train your mind with the same commitment you train your ambition, your body, and other things. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.